My name is Whitney, and I work in the Adult Services Department at Columbus Public Library. This is the second video in our Unknown Columbus series, where we feature information found in our Genealogy Department and perhaps some other local organizations that hold historical materials. I'd like to share information about Horace King and his impact on local history. Horace King was a bridge builder, engineer, architect, and politician who was responsible for dozens of bridges and buildings in and around Columbus and throughout the South. Horace King himself is well known in the Columbus area, but Horace King did so much more, but there are several aspects of his life that are lesser known that I'd like to share with you. Horace King was born into slavery in 1807. County lines change over time, but the area is now known as Chesterfield County, South Carolina. John Godwin, his owner, moved to the Columbus, Georgia area in 1832 when he won a bid to build a bridge connecting Alabama and Georgia. The next year, before the bridge's completion, John Godwin moved to Girard, Alabama. It's important to put historical figures into the time period in which they were living. Columbus, Georgia was established in 1828, so the settlement was still in its infancy. Streets were unpaved and crowded. The Creek Native American tribe had recently been pushed out of Georgia into Alabama, and often fighting occurred across the Chattahoochee River, but also in Columbus. Everything in this video I've connected with dates, and you'll see a timeline at the end. While building the Columbus City Bridge and completing it in 1833, Horace King was known to have the ability to get white and black workers to work together well. The bridge would come to be known as the Dillingham Street Bridge. John Godwin is said to have sent Horace King to Oberlin College in Ohio, though no records could be found. It is unknown why Horace King came back to the South after attending college in Ohio, since Ohio was a free state at the time. It is believed to be because Horace King's skill as a builder would not be utilized in the North, as they did not need as many bridges, and the South was rapidly expanding. The work Horace King did was so successful and well built that John Godwin guaranteed his work for 5 years. Any repairs would be made during that time at no cost. King continued to build bridges while he was a slave under John Godwin, including bridges in Eufaula and West Point. While building the bridge at West Point, Horace King met his would-be wife, Frances Thomas, who was a free woman, meaning any children they had would be born free. The King's 5 children, one of them, Washington King, built Watson Mill Bridge, which is now a state park, located in Comer, Georgia. Horace King and his children started King's Brothers Bridge Company and are responsible for many houses, buildings, and bridges in Alabama and Georgia. Horace King continued to build bridges, and his notoriety continued to grow. Like the Red Oak Creek Bridge, located in Woodbury, Georgia, on Cover Bridge Road, built in the 1840s. Horace King became free in 1846. There are several different claims on how this happened, but the 2 most plausible are as follows. The first, Godwin legally freed Horace King. By law, slave states did not allow freed slaves to stay in the state because they feared that they would cause dissatisfaction among other slaves. So once freed people had to leave that state. With influential friends, Godwin had a law passed in Georgia and Alabama that allowed King to stay and do business in those 2 states. Georgia and Alabama required a $1,000 bond from John Godwin for Horace King to stay in those states. The second is that Horace King bought his own freedom, as he stated he did later in life. During this time period, John Godwin experienced financial issues, so it is very plausible that Horace King, who was financially stable, provided the $1,000 bond, but that's speculation. We couldn't find any records. A business acquaintance was known to mention that Horace King worked on the Alabama state capitol after its fire damage in 1849, 12 years before the Civil War. He had no idea that a short time later he would serve as a member of the state legislature that utilized that building for their legislative meetings. Horus used a structural element known as the cantilever so that the staircases appeared to float without any central support. The Civil War was from 1861 to 1865. In 1864, Horace King's home was raided by Union soldiers where they took 2 mules, various pieces of farm equipment including a wagon, various farmed and bought food, clothes, bedding, cooking utensils, and tableware. As stated in Bridges' Deep South Rivers, which we'll mention later, Frances King, Horace King's wife, asked if there were any Masons present during this raid. One soldier answered yes, and Frances stated that her husband was a Mason and so was her father, and that she ought to be protected because of that. So that officer made them give them back 2 sacks of wheat byproducts. The pictures you see here are of King's Masonic medal. Unfortunately, it was stolen during a burglary of the family home at a later date. The picture here, also from Bridging Deep South Rivers, is the W.C. Bradley warehouse built in 1865 by Horace King and James Mueller. This picture is called Spring Villa, which is attributed to Horace King. He reportedly built the house for Mr. and Miss William Penn C. Young, who were the daughter and son-in-law of John Godwin, Horace King's former owner. A lesser-known fact about Horace King is that he also had a political career. He unenthusiastically allowed his name to be entered by several friends and colleagues for the run for the Alabama House of Representatives, where he won despite his best efforts. He served 2 terms from 1868 to 1872. He also served as a magistrate and registrar for Russell County. While the King's Brothers Bridge Company continued to have a lot of projects, King started a version of a retirement. He still assisted in running the business, but nowhere near as much as he used to. He moved into his son's new house in LaGrange, where he spent his time raising and riding horses. Horace King also worked with the Freedmen's Bureau. Horace King died May 28, 1885, but his grave marker incorrectly says May 27, 1887. His burial site can be visited today in LaGrange, Georgia. He can be found next to his son, Marshall Ney. In 1989, he was accepted into the Hall of Engineers for the state of Alabama. If you'd like to read more about Horace King, we have 3 books available for checkout. For the quickest read solely about Horace King, check out Horace King, Bridges to Freedom by Faye Gibbons. For a read on how Horace King fits into local history, check out Images of America, Phoenix City by John Lyles. For the most in-depth read, check out Bridging Deep South Rivers by John Leupold and Thomas French, Jr. This book is highly recommended as the information presented is extensive, and it is obvious after the first chapter that an enormous amount of research went into it, and it is cited extremely well, so if you want to go into even more detail, you can go to the primary resource. Keep in mind that there are still structures out there that were built by Horace King that you can safely visit in person while social distancing. Many of us pass these structures weekly, if not daily, and we have no idea the history behind them. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Columbus, Georgia history and Horace King. Thanks for tuning in.